Hey guys, I'm going to read a story to you that I found earlier today. If you could, take a few minutes to subscribe, like, comment, and don't forget to hit that notification bell. Thanks. Alright, this story is My Dead Mom Thinks I'm a Loser. She may have a point. My mom was a brilliant, charming, smart, and wickedly funny lady. One of those people who could light up a room, who could connect with anyone, because she had a story for every occasion. She was captivating, the sort of person that everyone wanted to be around, the sort of energy that you could never hope to understand, but just be happy to be taken along for the ride. Everyone says she could have changed the world, if it wasn't for me, that is. I never met her. She died from complications of giving birth to me, and I was left with this devastated father and a lifetime doomed to grow up in her shadow, and cloaked with guilt from the very moment I opened my eyes. I never had a chance. My dad was 17 years older than my mom, which was almost a double blow. I could tell he never even imagined she would die first. He had never been married before, no other kids, and widowhood was something he'd never even fathomed. He tried, but like I said, I was doomed from the start. Everyone expected great things from me because of my mother, and though no one could dare tell me I was a disappointment or a failure, I could see it in their eyes, in the way they refused to meet mine, the way they looked and whispered behind my back, the shaking heads. If you asked me, I looked like an uglier version of her. I had very dark hair, sharp features, but mine were just a little too big, too uneven, too far apart. But enough like her for me to see the emotion in my father's eyes every time he looked at me and saw her, wished I was her, and hated himself for it. I had never met her, and I despised her. I hated her for dying, for leaving me with such a curse, these shoes that I would never be able to fill. I hated myself for hating her, because the logical part of me knew it wasn't her fault. I hated myself for being a failure, and for letting all of the weight come down on me. Sometimes I took it out on my dad. We would argue sometimes, but tonight was the night I finally truly said something I regretted. It was the night I dropped out of college. I barely graduated high school, and honestly, the only reason I even wanted to go to college in the first place was because I knew that if you picked the right party school and happened to be a living, breathing female with boobs, you'd get free drinks and drugs. And that sounded pretty great. After a few weeks, I didn't even bother to go to class anymore. I figured I'd just make up some excuse to my dad and repeat them next semester. Dad, however, was fed up and made me move back home. It wasn't fair. He hadn't even given me a chance to plead my case. And I did want to apply myself. I did want to do something with my life. But college was an adjustment. And well, I had plenty of excuses all planned out. But Dad wouldn't hear any of them. He just shook his head, turned up the radio as he drove me home from school in silence. Once again, over dinner, I tried to make my case to Dad, only to be met with stony silence. And I started to get angry that he wouldn't even talk about it. So angry that I did what I usually do and picked another stupid fight with him. In all my years of fighting with my dad, I'd said plenty of nasty things to him, thrown many jabs and pointed words. I was quick to get angry, though I could never hold a grudge for very long. There were plenty of stupid things I attacked Dad for. Any shortcomings I perceived he had made as a single parent, anything I disagreed with about his outlook on life, his high expectations, and hell, I even called him old and old-fashioned once. But there was one thing I had never touched, not until tonight anyway. He said something about wishing my mother were still alive. In my fury, of course, I interpreted it as yet another jab at how he'd rather have her than me, even though logically I knew it wasn't an either-or thing. Oh yeah, I snapped, my temper rising. Of course he did. They all wished they could just have her back instead of me, the useless replacement. My hands balled into fists. Well, maybe if you didn't groom someone half your age, she could have had a chance instead of getting knocked up with your retarded spawn. I spit, and immediately regretted it. Even before I saw the shock and hurt that clouded my father's face, I immediately wished I could take it back, but it was too late. Dad, I didn't mean it. It was too late. He was gone. I heard the door to his room slam. I crumpled to the floor. I felt like a terrible person. I was a terrible person and a failure, and undoubtedly so because I was the kind of person who let something as stupid as a dead mom that people liked psych me out so much. I went to bed. Maybe we'd both feel better in the morning. My room resembled a messy fraternity rec room. A large flat-screen TV stood on a stand, piled with video games and DVDs in one corner. A pair of shorts hung on the TV. Drawers were open, and clothes and stuff were scattered about. Right by the door, on the dresser, was my bong, dab ring, and other marijuana paraphernalia. I knew Dad disapproved, but couldn't do shit because I'd gone behind his back for a medical card at 18, and it was legal in our state. I knew he hated the smell, so in part I kept all my stuff there in plain sight and smell just to piss him off when I was feeling particularly angry at the world. It wasn't that I didn't like it when things were clean, it just that cleaning was a lot of effort, and it was a lot easier to find your stuff if it was out in plain sight, right? I was just dozing off when a cool breeze blew in, powerful enough to send my curtains fluttering, and to make me shiver. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. With a frown, I got up and shut the window. It was towards the end of summer, but I certainly hadn't expected weather like this. I shut the window and turned around, then let out a strangled squeak of horror. There was a dark shadow standing next to the closet. In a blink, it was gone. I rubbed my eyes and took a closer look. Had I maybe mistaken my vacuum cleaner with a hoodie draped over it for a shadow? It still didn't look quite like a person, even if I squinted. I shook my head. I was probably just tired. I was getting back into bed when something grabbed my ankle. I tried to scream, but what felt like an icy invisible hand closed around my throat, choking me, silencing me. With a yank, I was on the floor. I lay there, stunned. The wind knocked out of me, pain shooting through my neck and back, and in another split second I was yanked under the bed. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. I was face to face with my mother. I recognized her from all the pictures Dad had around the house. Her dark hair, those sparkling green eyes, those red lips always curved into a smile in the photos. Except now, they were curled into a snare. For a ghost, she sure had a firm grip. You useless, pathetic creature. Her voice was eerie, echoing bizarrely in my ears. I heard her voice on recordings. She had a pretty singing voice when she was alive. It was a warm, rich, affectionate voice. But none of that was here now. Fear shot through me. What was going on? Was this a dream? I dreamed about my mother before, but only from a distance, and she'd never spoken. Draining the life out of him all these years, if only it was you instead of me, she said. Her words cut through me like a knife. A dry, choked sob escaped my lips. As much as I felt that everyone thought my entire life, no one had said it out loud until now. And my own mother, she felt that way too. I really was a useless failure. And you know it too. And you know I'm right. You don't even fight back, she snared. The green eyes that had sparkled with life and warmth in all the photos were now cold, dead, and hateful. She was right, but I finally felt something spark to life in me. At the very least, I couldn't let a darn ghost kick my ass. Before she could get another word out, I summoned all my energy and jerked toward her. I rode right through her, feeling a chill as I did. I scrambled out from underneath my bed, only for another breeze to whip through the room and pin me against the wall. I tried to fight it, and I wondered how on earth Dad was sleeping through this. I tried to call out, but my words caught in my throat. The wind swirled up the debris and clothing from my floor, and I found myself pinned to the wall by several pairs of my own dirty socks and underwear. I could only watch in horror as my mom slowly floated out from underneath the bed. Her lips twisted into a sickening grin as she came toward me. I wasn't religious, so I didn't have any crosses handy, but I summoned enough strength to grab 2 broken pencils off of the dresser next to me and hold them up in front of me shaped as a cross. Lame, I know, but hey, the crap works in the movies, right? My mother only laughed cruelly. The pencils were whipped through the air by the wind. I don't know what she would have done next, but at that moment there was sounds of footsteps running down the hall. The wind immediately disappeared. All of my belongings that had been whipping around in the wind fell to the ground. My room looked like it had been hit by a small tornado, but to be fair, that wasn't too far from how it looked usually. A second later, my dad burst in. I jumped, looking at him, wide-eyed. He looked at me. I heard some weird noises from here. Everything okay? Another wave of guilt flooded through me at his question. Even after the horrible thing I had said to him, he was still running to check and see if I was okay. Yeah, I just, fell out of bed, I replied lamely. He turned to leave. Dad, I'm sorry, he blinked, looking very much like a sad owl behind those large spectacles. He nodded and left. A tear trickled down my cheek. Except, not any more. A tear trickled down my cheek as I got in bed. I never felt so alone in my life. I'd never even given Dad a chance. And I always had the comforting thought of Mom to keep me going. Except not anymore. Not now. Not now that she hated me. I had nightmares that night. Horrible nightmares. About being chased by a horde of rats. They caught up to me and swarmed me. I was covered in them, feeling their hot, rancid breath on my face, feeling their sharp little claws all over my body. I didn't even realize it at first when I woke up because there was a rat sitting on my face. The sharp claws dug into my cheek, and it took a moment for it to register after it tumbled off of my face as I sat up in shock. The storm caused by my mother's ghost had blown my things all around, including some half-eaten pizza that had been sitting on the floor. A piece had blown into my bed, and the rat had been eating it. And holy crap, there was a real rat in my room. I screamed and scrambled backwards out of bed. Mom appeared in front of me again. "What, not getting along with your brethren?" she taunted, pointing at the rat again, vanishing with a nasty laugh. My heart pounded in my chest, and my face was red and flushed. I heard a nasty giggle from another corner, and I whipped around, looking for her. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, one empty liquor bottle I had scattered about started to rise off the floor. It flew at me, as though thrown by an invisible force. I was so stunned I didn't get out of the way in time, and I shrieked as the pain shot through my forehead. The empty bottle of Captain Morgan's bounced off of my forehead with a dunk. My eyes narrowed. Another bottle flew at me, and this time I ducked. It smashed against the wall, raining glass all over me. My hands balled into fists. I was starting to get angry. "Stop it. You weren't here. You can't just haunt me like a dick to criticize," I yelled. I knew it wasn't her fault she had been here. I mean, she'd been dead and all, but I just felt like I could stick up for myself. An empty tequila bottle flew at me, and this time I caught it. "At least come and get me to my face, Mother," I shouted, breathing heavily, sweat trickling down my forehead as my head whipped around, looking for her. A moment later, she slowly materialized in front of me, the same cruel leer look on her face. "Stupid, useless, good for nothing. I can't believe you share my genetics. You are an embarrassment," she taunted, her ghostly voice echoing. The room seemed to spin around me, and I clenched my teeth in fury. "No, I'm not," I shouted, hurling the bottle at her with all my might. "I'm not you, but I'm not a failure." Of course it passed right through her, and smashed against the opposite wall, and then she vanished. I sank back against the wall, breathing heavily. My dad burst in, looking concerned. "Are you okay?" "I only cleaned my room because of the rat. Waking up to the rat on my face was enough to get even the hardened slob like me to tidy up. Funny enough, after I did, I found I actually kind of liked it, and it wasn't too hard to keep it that way." Never would have thought. Partly because I wanted to be out of that room, and in other part to try and figure out how to deal with the vengeful spirit like dead mothers, I started spending a lot of time at the local bookstore. So much, in fact, that eventually they offered me a job. It was the first real job that I had that I didn't get fired from for not giving a crap. I really realized I actually liked reading, learning, and within a year, I re-enrolled in school and was actually attending class. Somehow, I was busy enough to almost forget that my dead mother hated me. Hell, I even stopped thinking about my dead mother entirely. A year later, I was on my way home for the holidays. Things had gotten a lot better between me and Dad. I felt kind of bad for not giving him a chance before. Poor guy really was doing his best. I decided to leave a day early and surprise my dad. The traffic had been pretty bad, so I didn't arrive until it was already dark. I guess my dad didn't hear my car pull in because he didn't greet me when I walked in. It was kinda late, so I figured he must have already gone to bed, and that I'd see him in the morning. I helped myself to a glass of water and headed upstairs to my room. That was when I heard my dad's voice in his room. Great, he's awake. I smiled to myself, eager to see the look on his face when I burst in. He wasn't expecting me until tomorrow. The door of his room was open a crack, and I was just looking through it, preparing to shout, "Surprise, Dad," when I froze. Dad was sitting on the bed. Next to him was Mom, a soft smile on her ghostly face, one arm draped around him. "Coming home tomorrow?" she questioned. Her voice sounded nothing like the cold, chilling ghost voice that had haunted me. Talking to Dad, her voice sounded like a warm, filled with love voice from one of the recordings I heard. Dad nodded. "Yes, it's amazing what a new leaf she's turned over this year." My mom's ghost laughed, sounding as beautiful and vibrant with my dad as she looked in all the photos. I saw her smirk at him faintly and wink. "I told you you should have let me intervene years ago."